Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin, and today we have a great panel to discuss food education. Culinary is covered, but who's teaching the business end? Um, but before we do that, let me thank the person who's paying the bills, Ed Flanagan and the Error Group. Listen, I've said this over and over and over, and hopefully it's finally starting to sink in. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And if you're not sure you're getting what you paid for from your distributors, or you think maybe your contracts need refreshing, call Ed Flanagan and the Error Group. They will sift through your invoices, they will sift through your contracts to make sure you're getting exactly what you paid for at the price you agreed to. So, for if you a little worried about what's coming in and out of your house, call Ed Flanagan and the Error Group. Back to our show. Food education, culinary is covered, but who's teaching the back end? But before we go into that, let's introduce our panel. Tara, why don't you start?
Great. Well, Larry, really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on this show. And Stephen and Fred, good to see you. And so, Tara Berman, I am the managing partner of Tara Page Group. We are an outsourced CFO and full service financial management team.
Thank you. Thank you. And Stephen, a friend to the virtual breakfast sessions.
Thanks, Larry. I've had the pleasures of being with you a couple of times or in the past, and I would say probably at the end of the day, education in the culinary world, the business world, has become my livelihood and my vocation. I was the dean of the business programs at the Institute of Culinary Education. I teach the management classes there on an occasional basis. And I also teach food business at Columbia Business School and NYU's Food Studies and Nutrition program. So I'm probably, if there's a target to be had in this show, I would be the target as well as the person who's an advocate. So
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 it's basically
you
all your fault.
it's all my fault. You can start the
Okay.
attack right now.
Okay. Good. 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 Say hi, Fred.
Good morning. I'm Fred Clashman, editor and publisher of Total Food Service. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay. Well, what a topic. We most people that are going to culinary school now got their start watching television or watching their grandmother. Their grandmother measured everything by handfuls and by eye. She never measured anything. In TV shows, they talk about creativity. They talk about executing the perfect spoon or the perfect dish, but nobody thinks that this stuff is actually being cooked in a restaurant that is a business. That is a business. So you can be the most creative person in the world, and yet your restaurant goes bankrupt. Stephen, talk to some of the points of some of these creative chefs who you've had to be their guard dog.
It's amazing to me, and one of the great opportunities I've had in my career is looking behind the curtain and see behind some of the creative chefs and seeing behind people who are in this business. And sometimes it's absolutely shocking to me when I'm brought in by an investor who sends me a financial statement from a world-class, world-known chef, and says, "Can you believe this?" And here's almost a seven-figure loss. And this chef is on television all the time. This chef is on doing personal appearances, and the chef is losing money. And that's a contagious disease, and it permeates many chefs. And it's sad because there are marketing chefs who are really great. Celebrity chefs are great at marketing themselves, but they're not necessarily great at running the business. And I remember at ICE when we would have these open houses and people would consider going to culinary school. I would say, if you don't take the management program, you're going to end up being the best chef at your house on Thanksgiving. And it's a real business, and you have to know not just how to cook, but you need to how to know make money at it. And I'll give you one other 2-second moment here. One of the largest, most important entertainment companies that runs, I'll tell you, Disney. When I did a proposal to Disney many years ago now, and Disney, I was at Disney World, and I went behind the scenes, and they had very little control of some of the operations of their food businesses. It was shocking. There were a bunch of small computers in the back of offices on Main Street, none of them talking to each other. The Magic Kingdom didn't talk to Epcot, which didn't talk to the resort hotels. It was phenomenally bad. And we made a great proposal to them to do work, but then they said, you know what, we're just going to hire people, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Steve. Yeah. And I think I want to follow up to that because, you and I talk a lot about how, it's the drama and, restaurants are created and why do people want to go to restaurants? And they want to go to restaurants for the branding, the atmosphere, the feeling that it creates. And some wonderful chefs that I have worked with, that I continue to work with, that you work with, create that emotional connection. But as Steve's talking about, what gets missed in culinary school sometimes, if you don't take the management program, what gets missed is really how to recipe cost, how to purchase. And those are the items that where chefs, if they don't have either themselves or a good partner or a good team around them to help them really understand those costs, it's where things go wrong. And Steve's absolutely right. There's a lot of businesses out there that are losing money, but yet lines are out the door for those restaurants. And it's because we're not looking at it first starts with let's recipe out our menu. Let's understand our ordering. Let's understand our PARs weekly. Let's really go to the recipe cost. And then it's understanding what is the margin per dish. And that is one of the key elements. And so we always look at, there has to be a healthy mix of what you're selling on the menu for, you could have a high cost item versus a low cost item, as long as that combination of that margin is getting you between 20 to 35, no more than 35%. Sometimes you can get 20. Some items can get you 15% costs. And so it's really understanding and tweaking and looking at that really can help these chefs and restaurateurs.
Long ago, 3 years ago, when the margins weren't so tight, people can get away with this stuff. And, there was a lot more play. We just had a show where they tried to drum into our heads. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. How do you get a student to understand that doing things by eye or by feel, even though it's creative, is a loss? Stephen.
Hold on a second. I have a question. I think there's an issue we're missing. And the issue is when you deal with culinary talent in particular, you're dealing with ego. And now what you're doing is you're asking somebody with an ego to literally check their ego at the door and either bring the help in to help them with what they don't understand. How do you guys see that? We see the answer, but this is tough.
Yeah, see, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Fred, I agree. And I think it's about surrounding yourself with the right people and asking for help. So yes, there's the ego of I can create great product. I bring people at the door, but otherwise the business is going to go failing, right? It's going to go out of business. That we know. So, and I think what happens sometimes is when they start to realize that, maybe a vendor has put them on hold because they can't pay the bill, they sort of wake up and say, I need some good people around me. Now, again, Steve and I have worked with many different clients. It's, we always say have a partner in the business because we can't do all things really well. And I think, even though, Fred, to your point, maybe there's an ego, I think the smart ones understand that and have a partner with them that can do the business and vice versa. It's really about finding that right mix of individuals and not being afraid also to use technology. technology is such a key element right now with restaurants and how really it can help you. And we can talk about AI later in the show, but maximizing the technology for your benefit. And I think even, and Steve, I'd love to hear about, with the schools, and I know with where you teach, how technology is coming into play with some of the, individuals that are going to culinary school today.
I want to take that question, but I also want to just take it back one step because, again, Larry, I know you're running a wonderful podcast here. You may have an audience that has a spectrum attached to it because there's different levels of culinary talent. I mean, there's well-known big city chefs who, as Fred says, have big egos. I've worked with them. I've gone to one of them and I've said, "How do you price your specials?" And literally, the chef said to me, "I pretty much feel what I think the price will be for this product." So there's no costing, there's no market analysis. It's just like this chicken is going to be $28 because he or she feels it. Um, and then on another level, there are many chain restaurants or multi-unit restaurants that actually do know how to make money. Maybe their product isn't as glorious and maybe they aren't as notable because they're serving more middle of the road products, but they do know how to make money. But even that sphere is 20% of the restaurants in America. 80% are mom and pops, single restaurants in cities around the country where people don't even know what they don't know. They do it because this is the way they saw it on YouTube, or if they got a moment to look at YouTube, or this is the way someone told them to do it. They don't even know what they don't know. And that's the majority of restaurants in America. And so we focus on the chefs, and that may be where your audience, Larry, is in the more high-end, big city names.
Broad
But at the end of
spectrum.
the day, it's the piece of the puzzle that is so unglamorous. It's the piece of the puzzle that no one likes to think, "Oh my God, I had a great day. I was able to cost out this recipe perfectly." At the end of the day, I'm not creating this glorious, exciting thing for a guest. I'm showing how I make money. And it's the grungy part of the business no one likes to talk about. And when you add technology to this pot, uh, again, technology is something a big city will do, a small chain will do, a chain will do. But 80% of America is not going to be doing technology anytime soon. Remember, we were one of the last industries to get a point of sale system technology, and we needed it the most, and we were the last. So it's
Yeah,
a
Steve,
work.
I'm not gonna, I will say I'm not gonna 100% agree with you. I think that, we see a lot of new businesses, mom and pops that, first of all, the technology, the sales industry around the technology is so all over, it's right in your face. And especially when we look at delivery, right? Like every mom and pop is incorporating delivery, Grubhub, that's technology right there. And from that, they're getting some, data. They're now able with, DoorDash to be able to market. So this technology, this is not obviously the
I think there's
technology.
different. I think there's
Yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
levels of
There's not
technology.
technology, correct. This technology is not, it's more spending, but I do think that they're aware of it. I think when we talk about, inventory management and recipe costing, that's the piece that's a bit harder. But I do think that they're aware of it, whether or not they want to spend. And again, it goes to that, smart, those that actually see that they're bleeding. Most mom and pops, they look at their bank account. That's how they know whether or not they're doing well. And they monitor that, week to week, month to month. They're just looking cash flow in, cash flow out. Where am I at? Can I pay the rent today? And when they start to see that really dip, they ask themselves, what can I do better? And what can I do to sort of maybe make a change in there? And we're definitely starting to see that.
Yeah.
So
So
hold
let's
on.
go ahead, Fred.
Guys, what's the bet that Cisco made last week with Restaurant Depot? Is the bet that people know what they're doing or don't know what they're doing to the tune of $29 billion?
It depends on whose view. I mean, if you're looking from Cisco's point of view, they're trying to tie up the entire restaurant supply chain because you can go to Cisco and buy their wholesale goods. You can buy their own brand of goods on three different levels, just like going to a grocery store and buying store brand.
Yeah.
And you can have it delivered, and they'll help you with recipe, they'll help you with processed foods. And now they're taking the lower end of the chain, which is Restaurant Depot and Jetero, where people will go as a literally, I won't say a last resort, but as an opportunity to buy your restaurant products quickly and easily without really checking prices and such. And they're trying to pull that in too. If you're a restaurant, you might be concerned that the culture of a wholesaler might slip into the Restaurant Depot culture. And so there will be more of a Restaurant Depot provides sort of a small business approach to small business, even though they're big. Cisco is a big business approach to small businesses. If that big business approach goes into this Restaurant Depot, they're going to feel like maybe they're not getting the same deals, they're not getting the bargains, they're not the whole reason why Restaurant Depot is there is going to disappear. It's going to be like going up to a Cisco warehouse and buying it.
Yeah, yeah. So
My question is framed with you guys have accused a couple of minutes ago of operators not knowing what they're doing. And I'm saying, do people actually know what they're doing? Do distributors know what they're doing? In other words, who is it in this chain that knows what they're doing? And so who is it that we need to educate going forward?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot.
Right.
And I think, the thing about a restaurant, if you're starting out new, is you hope you've worked somewhere else and you've learned from others. That's the first thing. And that's typically those that start their own. And when you're starting out, Steve and I have always said that anyone can open a restaurant. That's the thing. Anyone can go and open a restaurant today. But I do believe that people do know what they're doing. I think when it comes to the costs, I think it actually scares people. I think that just financial management itself is not a comfortable topic for a lot of people. And so, that's where I think the education, in terms of when we started this conversation about culinary school, and Steve said, everyone should take a management course, I think is really important. I think that, large companies, Restaurant Depot, they know what they're doing. Cisco, they know what they're doing. Most of the distributors know what they're doing. They're very, I would say, well educated in that. But it's those that are starting out can really use the assistance of understanding a P&L, understanding the impact of various items on the P&L, the labor, the cost. Like those are the two biggest costs right there.
So let me just break in on this thing because I'm getting a different vibe coming in. So the egotistical chef is going to be the egotistical chef, whether Steven stands on his head and says 1 billion times, you must take the business course, you must take the business course. So when an egotistical chef comes into a restaurant that you've spent millions of dollars to build, and a scorpion acts like a scorpion, and you start to complain, whose fault is that? Now, maybe it's not the chef that we should be pointing out. It's the business owner, because you hired this guy and you're getting exactly what you expected. When you step into an operation like that, Tara, and you see where the owner is waving his hands around, I'm losing money, do you start with the chef or do you start with the owner?
Well, I will tell you, we have a client that we're working with, and I won't share the name. That I think this. I'm listening, and I'm having. I think the egotistical. I don't know if people's egos are really that big as what we're talking about. I think that everyone. I think hospitality in general is. I think people are pretty humble in the sense that you want to really serve people. But yes, there's an outlier for everyone. So we have this one client where the chef really doesn't cost anything out, prices the menu, and everyone looked to the chef to say, okay, this is what we're doing. And now it's, 2 years later, and we're making a change. But it took a long time to make that change within the operation. And yes, that individual chef was hired by the ownership team because of the product, because of the name. So absolutely. Now, did this individual have a big ego? I don't really think so. I think this individual just really didn't understand cost nor care because no one ever asked the individual to care about it. I think at their prior position and now at this position. And so for us in doing all the financial management work, we're working with the operator to then work with the chef. But it hasn't really worked out that well because the chef ultimately is the one who purchases the product, prices out. And so you have this sort of mismatch of, how does the initial team manage the chef very well? And I think we've come to really where there's an impasse. And we're going to make a change.
So what is the difference, if maybe you can do this in your head, of hiring you at the beginning as they were forming the restaurant so that you developed systems and everything to go along, or them losing money for 2 years and then coming to you?
But this is exactly, and by the way, Larry, your comment about you're getting the vibes. In my age, if I feel any vibes at all, it's a good day.
Thank God something still works.
Yeah, but the key is, look at Gordon Ramsay, all of the repercussions he's gotten lately. He can go into a restaurant, tell them this is what you need to do, this is what you have to do, here's how it is, and he does it in a very obviously theatrical way, but some of what he has is truth. And then he leaves and no one carries out because no one knows how to do it. He's kind of, here's the game plan, here's the playbook. Now you got to go out there and play the game. What's a chef? I talk at my classes and I see, what is a chef? A chef is usually the person that's been there the longest and is the last one standing. So congratulations, you're a chef. Larry, you're a chef. Fred, you're a chef. Well, I know Tara's a real chef. Sorry. The exterminator's coming upstairs.
Okay.
But
hopefully that's pest control.
Yeah, pest control.
Okay, good.
Excuse me, could I get the owner in here? I'm having a mouth problem. Which is true.
Well, I think, Steve, what you're talking about is at the end of the day, and we say this all the time, it's execution. Everyone can talk about, for even us, we can come in, I can look at P&L and can say, oh yeah, your food cost is 40%. We got a problem. That doesn't mean anything. They can do that as well. What they need is the plan and the execution. And that's the critical part here is how are we going to really turn this around, or how are we going to start in a good way? So to answer your question, Larry, about is it better to hire us before or in the middle? It's great to hire us anytime, right? Like season is open. But yes, it's always best to hire from the beginning, but that doesn't matter. I think, restaurants are a very emotional business, very emotional. And I think it's, emotions probably make more of the decision making than facts and and really going on the reality. And so even bringing us in, it's an emotional decision. It's a decision to not have it all within your world. It's a decision to say, you know what, I actually want to look under the hood and see what, as Steve said, this is the unsexy part of the business. But to us, it's like the most interesting part, right? Because we really get to see and understand the various levers that need to be pulled financially. We always say, you can make a financial impact, but now let's understand the operational impact to that. So you can't pull one lever without the other. If you want to say, oh, well, our food cost is high. Okay, well, let's just not buy any of that high seafood anymore. Okay, well, now we go to a different vendor, but now that vendor's product isn't as good. So that makes it an operational impact, a guest impact. And so you're always looking at those two items together.
there's a little X factor in here that's kind of the big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about. And it's a cash business in many ways. And I don't care if you're taking credit cards, there's still a fair amount of misappropriation of funds in small food businesses. And the more business controls you add in, the harder it is to do that. As I taught a course for a while as a recreation course at the Institute. I can't say ICE anymore because it's the people think it's immigration. The Institute of Culinary Education in how to steal. In fact, I think Tara, you may have been a guest speaker. I've seen.
I was there when you had the NFL players there. I was
Oh,
there
you
to
were
see
there when we were
to
with
see
our
them
NFL
steal.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I've learned from the best on how to steal, people who have really great experience in stealing. And when you start to think about that, the system is defeating because it's harder to steal if you're a good business person, or you're in a situation where your theft becomes much more challenging. And so a lot of business, my guess, because this is not something people keep track of, is half of restaurants, single and proprietary steal to some level.
100%.
And this is the antidote to theft. And so people are a little reluctant to get into this business if they say, if I can't pull cash out here or pay this person part on the books and part off the books, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure after the show, I'm going to be called by the Internal Revenue Service or something like that. Say,
Yeah, I mean, we always say, if absolutely, if you don't have good there's a few things. It's good systems and accountability, and really then checking the accountability for everyone in literally the food chain of the restaurant. And as we're talking about these chefs, a lot of these chefs that come in. And it's hard to put that accountability. We know the restaurants, the doors open and you're busy, you're running around, right? So now all of a sudden you have to do all this administrative work to really push the accountability and the checks and balances, not just on the chef, but on the sommelier, in the serviceware. So there's so many opportunities here. We're talking about chefs, but there's lots of areas that happen within the business where costs need to be managed. And if you sort of I always say that any chef, anyone making a purchase really should be part and parcel of the business and understand the business, because when it's not their money, there's a very different story on how people react to spending. So when it's your dollar that you're spending to go make purchases, you think differently. And so how do we really hook the individuals that are running the restaurant to be accountable and to really feel the money coming in and out? That's what's key and what's critical. Because when there's no accountability and just, we're losing money. Oh, sure, go purchase, even though you're 50% at food cost, then we have a real problem there.
Yeah.
I think I just want to get back to Larry. The reason why we're here today is the culinary school and culinary education is a foundation for this. And when you called me to be on the show, I mean, culinary education teaches the right way, also gives you a view of the wrong way. So anytime you think about, I love it when people come and take classes who have been in the business, because there are people, again, it's a little harder to re-educate than educate, but there are people who once the light bulb goes on, they can take that concept of, hey, maybe I didn't add yield management properly into my recipe, and take that right back to the home team and play the game differently. So a culinary school gives you the right way, but it also examines other people's ways of doing it. So you get really a spectrum of your choice on how to make money if you choose to. One's going to be easier, one's going to be harder. But that's the value of a culinary school education.
Okay. Well, listen, as always, time is our enemy. And we're coming near the end of the show. But before we shut it off, I want to thank Ed Flanagan, the Error Group. If you tired of paying taxes, and it is a bad day, it is tax day today. If you're tired of paying taxes for your employees, ask Ed Flanagan and the Error Group about their 125 cafeteria plan. The IRS is set up that you could actually claw back some of that money that you're paying the IRS when you could be paying for benefits instead. So Ed Flanagan, the Error Group, and listen, it was a great panel. Like I said, time just flies by. But before we go, Tara, why don't you start and give those people that are listening that one bit of information they need to take home?
I think it's be curious. I think for everyone getting into the industry, be curious to what's around you. Don't stay in your lane, and really be open to what others around you have kind of come before you, have learned, and take that, into your own operation.
Okay, Stephen.
And just to amplify that, just know what you don't know and get help. Realize there's people out there. We're a wonderfully sharing industry. So look for help. If you say, I think I know this right, but let me see if I can find someone that knows it better, and they'll come buy them lunch and they'll help. And at the end of the day, practice safe eating. Always use condiments.
Well,
follow that, Fred.
you can never follow him. He's amazing. You can never follow. Next time distributor vendor comes in, pull out the menu and go through and ask him or her, do you know what each of these things are costing me to plate every day, and what my net ROI is on each of them? And I'd start there. I think it's time to change the vendor relationship. Not change vendors, but change the nature of the relationship, and create a partnership in which they provide some of this education that you need.
I agree, Fred. So, end of our show. Listen, we keep talking about how we're talking about culinary, we're talking about chefs. Remember, restaurants are a team sport. A team sport. If you're going in to this group thinking you're an individual, you're not. You're a cog in the machine. And you want to be an individual? Play golf, play tennis. But if you're going to join a kitchen, you got to work as a team and think as a team. And I just want to pull up one more quote from our last show that we did something on this. Remember, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And you can't measure a handful, a pinch, and these things. Everything must be standardized as much as it can be. So we're going to be back tomorrow speaking to our EDU series and the education series. You should look it up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. They're now being posted. But until tomorrow, I only have one thing to say. Stay positive, test negative. See you tomorrow. Bye now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care.